This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in. It is another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, talking District 5 and 6 activities week in, week out in the great state of Idaho. Brandon Baney joined by our East Idaho expert, Sean Kane. Yo, what's up, Skane 182?
Hey, the AstroTurf or field turf is not always greener on the other side.
Okay. I assume you're using that as a lead into what the main topic of conversation is going to be this week, and that's injuries, which are sad and unfortunate. And we will get to that in just a second. But first, I am so sick of talking about stuff that doesn't happen on the field. But really quickly, let's address this whole Pocatello Ridgevue thing one final time. Not long before we were set to sign on to record the Prepcast, you're going to be seeing this late Wednesday the 13th, early Thursday the 14th. But we talked about it last week. Pocatello Ridgevue were supposed to play this football game. Sean ended up getting canceled. We dissected it 5 ways from Sunday, and now today Pocatello High School has sent a letter of apology to Ridgevue High School.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's just kind of an interesting turn of events, right? Basically just apologizing for some comments, made. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say exactly. You don't see a whole lot of apology letters during the football season, right? Like, sorry. Right. So, I mean, it's just, I went and talked to a few other people about, what could have happened. And, just no one really could come to any sort of kind of interesting conclusion. But I guess is the conclusion, law and order sometimes ends with the judge is about to go guilty or not guilty, but it ends, right? That's kind of how I felt. And then now we get this letter. So part 2.
So this all stemmed from an interview that head coach Dave Spillett from Pocatello High School did with the local TV station down there in Pocatello, KPVI. And in there, he basically gave Pocatello's side of the story. And, I think it was still close enough to the actual cancellation that the feelings and emotions were raw a little bit. And anyways, at Ridgevue maybe felt the comments weren't fair to them. It kind of cast them in a bad light. I don't know. I thought we did a pretty good job of explaining their side of it, Pocatello's side of it last week. Yeah. But here's my thing, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I feel like, and this letter was, I think it was signed by a couple of different people, but Lisa Delanis, the principal at Pocatello High, kind of the spearhead here, right?
Yeah, that's who signed the letter. I mean, the letterhead has all the administrators from the school, but she's the one that signed it at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, and this happens all the time in the NCAA, in the professional leagues. People have to write these letters of apology or make statements that say, hey, I'm sorry for what I did. But this has been now almost 2 weeks, 10 days at least since that interview aired. Both teams have played a whole another game since then. Why now is this apology letter coming out?
Yeah, honestly, I'd kind of forgotten about it until we saw that, right? I kind of, like we've talked about it. Everyone's got their 2 bits in. Let's move on. We've got a lot of football and a lot of season left. So it's kind of interesting that it comes out, today. It's a Wednesday, right? Wednesday, if you're hearing this later, but on Wednesday, it's just kind of a odd time for it to come out. So, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think we really have to get into too much. It's kind of like the end of the episode. I think we're ready to move on and talk about actual football or other sports, golf, soccer, whatever, volleyball.
Yes. I think the end of the episode is going to be our title. I know you wanted the field turf thing, but sometimes the title happens organically and you just have to. Okay, here's my last thing. And I'll probably get in trouble for this, but that's the caveat here. And maybe Lisa Delanis was gone and she just got back to the school and got back to work. But if Pocatello really felt bad about it, they would have sent the apology after it happened. This to me seems like Ridgevue I don't know. It feels like a letter that was forced. Like, hey,
I
write
kind
this
of
letter.
I kind of look at it like it's kind of a tactic they use in schools when a student has some bad behavior. They make them write a letter of apology to the teacher, but it happens either that day or maybe the next day, depending on what in the schedule, right? Or a student like that. I mean, I sometimes don't remember what I did yesterday, so I can't imagine a high school student remembering either. So yeah, I think when you look at a letter like that, you kind of look at time, place, and manner, right?
Yeah.
The lemon test, if you constitutional law enthusiasts in watching this.
Oh man. So that is the absolute last we are going to spend talking about this situation at Pocatello High School. There's a lot of outside the arena stuff happening there right now. And I'm done with it. I want to start talking about actual results, like you said. So that is the update there. Let's shift to what was a really bad week. It's been a bad season overall of injuries. Not even just in football, but I feel like in cross country, there's been runners that have been, dinged up. There's been, to me, a lot of injuries across the board early in the high school sports season this year. Football, of course, is the spotlight where everybody looks the most. And we had two devastating injuries in two separate districts in East Idaho last Friday night, Sean. We'll start with Bonneville. They were playing Ridgevue in a non-conference battle. It was towards the end of the first quarter. Tim Williams, star running back for Bonneville, kind of gets tackled by two Ridgevue players, ends up suffering a really bad leg injury to the point where game had to be stopped. He had to be taken in the ambulance to the hospital. And Bonneville's players, I think, were kind of not in a good headspace to continue playing that game. It almost like the Buffalo Bills thing last year. Not that, Tim Williams, stopped breathing or anything. He was totally fine there, but just the part where the players said, I don't really feel like I could go back out there and play after this happened. And so they called the game there at the 2:30 mark of the first quarter or whatever it was. So it goes down as a forfeit by Bonneville. It's a win for Ridgevue, but really the main focus was, okay, how's Tim doing? So he's obviously, this is a devastating injury. He's going to be out for probably the year in terms of sports. But the best part that I saw on Bonneville social media was he's in pretty good spirits here. Here's what the quote said. He says, I know God has a plan and things happen for a reason. And so he's taking it really well and he's on the mend. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with Tim and his family and everybody up there in the Bonneville community as well.
Yeah. And what's the statistic? If you play football, you have 100% chance of getting injured, right? So it's one of those things that's really part of the game. And that's, a great way to look at it. And, he's okay, right? I mean, he's going to be okay. And that's, I think, the most important part. And hopefully that's the takeaway, is that sometimes everyone being healthy and going on with their lives is really the most important part.
Yeah. And then there was some rumblings about, was the hit clean? Was it not, on the Ridgevue side of things? And I liked Coach Bobby Romander came out and again kind of just said like, hey, like let's not worry about that part of it. Basically what they said in the post was, I've heard rumblings of some negative banter back and forth. I would ask us as a community and especially Bees Nation to be like Tim Williams, and take the high road. His example has lifted and strengthened us continuously since we've known him, but especially in the last 24 hours. And then one of the Ridgevue players even reached out and said like, hey, I feel awful that this happened. And so I think the fences are mended. We certainly wish Tim Williams a recovery. It's not going to be speedy, but we wish him the best in his recovery. And yeah, it's good to see that both sides are going to put this behind them and now carry on the rest of the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's what you have to do, is just, there's not a ton of positives to come out of it, right? But what positive can you do? How can you move forward? And it seems to be the track we're heading, and that's probably the best outcome.
Yeah. So Bonneville, again, star running back Tim Williams suffers a pretty gruesome and serious leg injury in that game that was ultimately forfeited to Ridgevue. Sean, you were on the call Friday night for Highland and Century in a crosstown battle. Highland won the game 58-3, but the big story there was Deagan Crabtree, this really young but kind of promising quarterback for Century. He gets taken to the hospital with a pretty significant injury.
Yeah, it was, unfortunately, it was Century's best drive. They're moving the ball. Deacon Crabtree's hitting some long passes, and they're in a 1st and 10 situation, and he pitches the ball, gets hit, and it doesn't look like anything that significant, but that turned out to be pretty significant. They had to get the ambulance and get him out. He, lost some feeling in the right side, but the good news, he's discharged and he's on a recovery, but it was just kind of a crazy turn of events. The game just stopped and both sides agreed to let the time run out. There's about 6 minutes left in the second quarter, and and they said they're going to let the time run out. And so that's what I thought was happening. So we're kind of trying to cue the halftime stuff, but then they came on with 5 seconds left and said, Century called a timeout, and they kicked a field goal. And then they had homecoming stuff like that. But he's doing well and he's recovering. And man, and then subsequently in the third quarter, Adrian Gonzalez comes in, plays 3 plays, and he's the backup quarterback for Century, and he breaks his collarbone and doesn't come back. So I didn't know that until later, but it was just a rough night in the quarterback position for the Diamondbacks, and they had a bunch of injuries, and it was tough. And I guess there was discussion about stopping it at halftime, but they kept playing. But what it was really nice to see is the Highland coaches, the Century coaches, they all know each other. They were talking, they were all making sure everyone was all right, and it was just really, really good. I thought sportsmanship from both sides, just to make sure that you had the best outcome and safety.
Yeah, and that's a tough one where it's a crosstown rivalry, right? I'm pretty sure Highland and Century have played every year since Century opened as a school, and it's one of those games where you can't not play it. It's the way it is with crosstown rivalries. But the disparity in depth and talent, if we're being honest, between Highland, a 5A power, and probably we think one of the best 5A teams in the state, and Century, which is a 4A team that's among the smallest and doesn't have much in terms of varsity players. It's bad. But I'm glad that Century continued the game and didn't give up at halftime and continued to play, because that is ultimately only going to make those players stronger. So
yeah, so other kids got opportunities to get in. Same with Highland of having a lead. So I mean, at the end of the day, you want the people to be okay, but it was nice for both sides to get some opportunity for minutes, and that's kind of what we talked about on the broadcast as well. But yeah, it's a rough situation, but there's some positives too.
Definitely. So again, injuries statewide this year have been just awful, and we hope everybody is safe as they continue to compete out there, especially in those contact sports. But even like I said, in the non-contact sports, cross country, we've seen runners it's almost like load management. NBA players will selectively sit out races or sit out games to manage the load, so they're at their absolute peak for the playoffs. Well, we're seeing that more and more in cross country, where Neela Roberts, Skyline star senior, trying to go 4 for 4 in 4A state titles. She has said this year, hey, look, there's going to be some races where I just don't compete. And I'm doing that because last year I had a nagging injury, and I wasn't sure how it was going to affect me. And so she's just trying to be preventative this year, which I totally get. But one of the meets she did compete in, of course she had to. It's her home meet. It's Tiger-Grizz. We had it last Friday on IdahoSports.com from Freeman Park in Idaho Falls. You're going to be shocked to hear this, Sean, but Neela Roberts won her race. It was a seeded race for the first time. They took the best times, regardless of whether you were a 5A or a 1A athlete, and they put the best of the best in a race together. And Neela Roberts ended up winning it in her season debut.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a betting man, I would have betted probably that way. But yeah, nice job. I just thought it was interesting and a very cool factor to have that seeded aspect to the race. It made it pretty interesting. I think because you have so many competitors, 40 something schools, and just having that seeded aspect, you got the best of the best going head to head, and that's what more do you want in sports?
Yeah, and every race we ever cover, it seems like it's Neela Roberts from Skyline first, and then Courtney Earl from Thunder Ridge second, and that's exactly how it played out here. Courtney Earl, in another era, would be like we'd be talking about her all the time, winning all these races. She just happens to be here at the same time as Neela Roberts, and Neela is just a little bit better. But man, Courtney Earl from Thunder Ridge is also very fun to watch run and compete. And then we had some highlights on the girls' side. In our B division, Sean, that was for the smaller schools. So we had the seeded race, and then for the athletes that didn't qualify for that, we had an A race, which is 5A, 4A schools, and then we had a B race, which is 3A, 2A, 1A. And we had a lot of East Idaho girls do well in that B race. The Boone sisters, Liza and Lucy from Ryrie, both competed pretty well. Ryrie as a team did really strong, and so they'll be, Ryrie's a team to watch on the girls' side for cross country this year also.
Yeah, just they'll be tough. Anytime you have two strong racers, man, it makes the team, you're pacing, and every day you're going against the best. That's going to be very beneficial later.
Yeah, in fact, Ryrie won the B girls title, the 3A, 2A, 1A title over Soda Springs. Ryrie finished with 55 points. Soda finished with 64. And in cross country, it's like golf. You want the lowest score wins there. So yeah, congrats to Ryrie. And then the individual champion in the girls B race was a freshman from West Jefferson, Bella Spencer. Sean, she won all 3 times she competed in junior high at the Tiger-Grizz. She won in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. She wins the B race in her freshman year. She's 4 for 4 at Tiger-Grizz in her career so far, and she's still got 3 more years of high school competition.
That might be something to track, right? Who gets the Tiger-Grizz full circle? I don't know. What do you call it in racing when you win them all?
Run the gauntlet.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was like horse racing. If you win them all, right? There's something. Anyways, never mind.
The triple crown, but that's only 3 though.
The 8 crown or whatever, I guess, for the Tiger-Grizz, or 7 crown.
Yeah, so congratulations to Bella Spencer from West Jefferson as well. On the boys' side of things from Tiger-Grizz, Sean, I thought the biggest storyline was, again, in that boys' seeded race. It was a kid from Rocky Mountain who won. No surprise, Rocky Mountain is like not only the best program in the state, but probably one of the best in the entire Pacific Northwest. Rocky Mountain High from Meridian, the 5A program. But taking second place in this loaded field of runners was Corbin Johnston from North Fremont, a 2A athlete, getting second overall. I expect big things from Corbin Johnston this year on the cross country circuit.
Yeah, he's a name that comes up when we do any sort of mixed meet race, right? In track too, right? He's always at the top, so it's awesome when he gets to compete with that big seeded field. So nice job by Corbin Johnson, man. That's good stuff.
Yeah, he's the younger brother. Zach Johnston is the older brother, but Corbin, since he's come onto the scene, he's now a junior at North Fremont. He's just been phenomenal to watch. And then in the B race, Ezra Hubbard of Rockland ended up winning the title, representing the 1A Bulldogs. So way to go, Ezra Hubbard. There's kind of this opening here, Sean, where the dominant runner in 1A cross country the past several years has been Ian Stockett from Victory Charter, which is a private school over there in Boise, but he has now graduated. It's kind of opened this void, and most people in cross country circles are thinking it's going to come down to the state title to Ezra Hubbard of Rockland, but also Ian's younger brother, Luke Stockett from Victory Charter. Can Hubbard finally take out the Stockett family this year?
It's a family affair, I guess, right? Family feud. But cross country,
right? So we'll keep an eye on Ezra Hubbard from Rockland. as well. We had a lot of fun at Tiger-Grizz this past week for sure. So congrats to all of the outstanding athletes who were running and competing there. Okay, let's talk some volleyball action here, Sean. We have every week Lindsay Togiai Afuk. That's a name East Idaho fans will recognize, of course. She played at Century High School and under Pauline Theros, who's now the athletic director at Idaho State University. And she writes a weekly column for us. She's kind of our in-house volleyball analyst here at IdahoSports.com. She writes a weekly column called "Keeping Up with the Kill," where she highlights just a couple of things that she's seen, or a couple of noteworthy things. 2 weeks ago, she profiled Addie Evans from Pocatello High School. This week, one of the things she focused on was Snake River. And the Panthers have kind of quietly gone under the radar this year in the 3A ranks. Everybody talks about Kimberly, the defending state champions, and Fruitland, which got to the championship and had the player of the year in the entire state as a freshman. But Snake River beats Kimberly last week, and they're now the number 1 team in the volleyball coaches poll, which was just released today. This is a really promising Snake River team.
Yeah, and Snake River 1-3, right? It wasn't like a 5-set match. They took down Kimberly in 3 sets. So yeah, you kind of expect that matchup maybe to go the distance, but that's a nice job by Snake River. Yeah, kind of just sneak their way up to number 1 in the poll too, right? Snake River is now the number 1 team in that 3A division.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible to watch Snake River compete and do all these incredible things. A couple of players that Lindsay, sort of highlighted in Keeping Up with the Kill is Zoe Watt. She's a setter. Madison Watt is the libero, which is, defense only. Taylor Carlson plays in the middle, and then 2 defensive specialists in Josephine Cook and Cassidy Bingham. They're all seniors. So this is the year. Snake River's kind of pushing their chips to the middle of the table with all these seniors. And I've got to say, I'm pretty impressed with what Snake River's been able to do. They're always consistently a solid program, but really opening some eyes by taking out Kimberly. The Panthers are 4-1 on the season. They lost to Kimberly in the season opener. Yeah, in 5, 3-2. But bounced back with the sweep of Kimberly. They just swept a really good South Fremont team on Tuesday night, Sean. So, and they've swept Sugar, Salem, and Teton. In fact, every match they've won this year has been a 3-0 sweep, except for that 5-set loss to Kimberly.
Yeah, so, the numbers don't lie, right? But, yeah, it's nice that they got to play Kimberly twice. I mean, that's some foresight into the future of what's going to happen, right? And maybe later on in the year where those teams might end up. So yeah, that's a great job by Snake River and a very good experienced group.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun to watch. We talked about last week in terms of volleyball. We kind of singled out a D1 and a D2 program, right? We talked about Grace and Mackey. I kind of wanted to do the same thing again this week, except it's conference rivals of theirs. At the 1A D1 level, Sean, Butte County is off to an 11-0 start. They have played 11 matches already this year. They haven't done much in terms of going to tournaments where those results don't count. They have played a lot of try matches. And so because of that, they've built up this 11-0 start with some really impressive wins. I mean, they have beaten Teton, a 3A school. They've beaten North Fremont, West Jefferson, Aberdeen, and Salmon. Those are all 2A schools. They've beaten some of the best in their own classification, Raft River, Cary, Murtaugh. Murtaugh is number 1 in the coaches poll, or was number 1 in the coaches poll. They're still ahead of Butte County, even though the Pirates beat them. I'm like, what happened here? But they're 11-0 and looking really good.
Yeah, you kind of have to wonder you're 11-0. What does it take you to get from that 5th spot? I mean, I don't know what. So yeah, Murtaugh is a big win. Has been in the top for a while. So Butte County is probably asking themselves, what we got to do to get a little higher in that poll? But, polls are polls, wins are wins, and 11 wins speaks volumes.
Yeah, Tavy Rogers is really leading the charge up there for Butte County this year. And it's going to come to a head here, Sean, on Thursday night, Thursday the 14th. first time this year, we're going to see Butte County and Grace compete. This matchup will be in Grace, and this is a game of undefeated teams. Butte County's 11-0, Grace is 6-0, and I suspect that these two teams are 2 of the 8 best in the state. Unfortunately, this year, their District 5 and 6, only gets a half bid to state. The district champion doesn't automatically get to go. They have to play a play-in match still. So you're looking at Butte County and Grace and going, somebody's going to be sitting at home for state, and the possibility of both teams not making it. Man, that just doesn't sit right with me. It's time to expand the tournaments.
Oh no. I mean, why have a district championship if that does? I don't know. We've done that, but I mean, if you're going to play the tournament, there might as well be something to get out of it. But just to have to go play again, that's just crazy to me.
And my heart breaks for whichever of those two was going to be sitting at home on play-in Saturday, not even having a chance to compete to go to state, because I really do believe Butte County and Grace are 2 of the 8 best teams in the state this year in 1A D1 volleyball. But unfortunately, that's the way it goes. Okay, 1A D2 level, Sean, we got to talk about Grace Lutheran. The Royals are 5-0. They're 4-0 in Rocky Mountain Conference play. This is their best start in school history, Sean.
Yeah, just a great job by Grace Lutheran. Again, kind of like Snake River. You're not really, it's not what it comes to mind when you think volleyball in that level, but slowly but surely off to 5-0, and really probably what you're saying most important is that 4-0 in that big conference there. So yeah, that's a nice job.
Yeah, Grace Lutheran. I kind of, yeah, my dog's really impressed with that too. Can you ever hear that when my dog barks?
Yeah, I could hear that one. Yeah.
Yeah, she's laying right next to me on the floor, so there's no masking that. So Grace Lutheran, we talk about this all the time. I don't have favorites when it comes to schools, right? I'm not from Idaho, so I don't really have. People think I'm biased against certain schools, but I really am not. But I will say I do have a soft spot in my heart for Grace Lutheran, only because when I lived in Pocatello, they were one of the closest schools to where I lived. I mean, Highland was technically the closest, but Grace Lutheran was right there too. You're talking like 3-minute drive from my house to Grace Lutheran. We went there for the first time last year and did some basketball games on IdahoSports.com, which was really cool and exciting. And it's a great community there at Grace Lutheran. I've gotten a couple of emails from some of their fans and administrators saying, hey, can we talk? Yeah, exactly. Can we talk about this team a little bit? They beat Rockland on Saturday 3-0. Okay, stop, Bella. Lay down. They swept Rockland 3-0. It's the first time Grace Lutheran has ever beaten Rockland in varsity volleyball. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, just it's a nice job. It's a small A1 D1 school, right? I mean, it's small, but they have a good community. Everyone goes out and support, doing the games there last year. Basketball, girls and boys, is just kind of fun. Jeremy Hess, the AD there, great atmosphere. Everyone supports. It's if you're going to go see a small school sporting event, and you kind of gets lost in Pocatello, right, with the 3 big high schools, that you've got Grace Lutheran and you think of all the other schools and all the kids that go there, and they're able to pull together that kind of team to get a win over a pretty good, not pretty good, but always a really good Rocky Mountain or Rockland team. I mean, it's a testament to what they're trying to build there at Grace Lutheran, and it's a great thing to see.
Yeah, so the Royals then not only swept Rockland, but then they swept Leadore on Tuesday night as well. They have not dropped a set this year. Now, they acknowledge, hey, we haven't played Water Springs yet. They're pretty good. We haven't played Mackey yet, and we know Mackey's good. Mm-hmm. But, man, the Royals, 5-0, 4-0 in conference. Really exciting time for Grace Lutheran volleyball. So we wanted to give them a shout out. And it's not like they have like a ton of players, right?
No.
I think for girls basketball last year, I think they had 6 or 7. Yeah. And it's kind of similar in volleyball where there's not a ton of student population to pull from. So, the fact they're doing this is really impressive.
Yeah, just when you only have that, that you got what you got, and to pull that around that way is phenomenal, and it builds. It probably gets some more kids out too. Like next year, like, oh yeah, the volleyball team's got it going on. We're gonna get a few more. So I mean, it helps build for the future as well. That's what you like to see in schools that don't have the numbers.
Yeah, and Grace Lutheran did crack the top 5 in the coaches poll this week for volleyball. I believe they were at number 4. Before we duck out of here, Sean, let's talk soccer, where the soccer coaches polls just came out today, boys and girls. Let's start with girls soccer. I'll tell you who from East Idaho is in the top 5, and then you can kind of expand on whatever you want. Nothing in the 5A. The top 5 spots in the 5A are all Boise area schools. So there you go. 4A, Pocatello girls are ranked 2nd in the 4A poll, Sean. They are still undefeated. They're 8-0 overall, 1-0 in league play. This is shaping up to be a really special season for the Thunder.
Yeah, the Thunder is, they didn't have, oh, now you can hear my dog. She's excited. The Thunder, they didn't lose. It's very similar to their basketball team. They didn't lose a lot from last year. It was a young team. That young team's back. What I hear from coaches across the area is that they are possibly the fastest team in soccer, in 4A soccer. They're one of the fastest teams, and when you can play fast, it just makes a huge difference. So yeah, they're 2nd in the poll, but I would say as far as soccer, they're kind of a little under the radar, because when you talk 4A soccer, you talk BK, you talk Sandpoint from Northern Idaho, and then Magic Valley. Usually Twin Falls is really a strong girls soccer team, but right now that Thunder team is really rolling.
Well, in the last couple of years, Preston has been kind of the premier team in the district, and Pocatello's just got athletes. I mean, you've got Bunderson, and you've got Ellie Hawkinson and Liv Marshall, all these players that were on that girls basketball team that got to state for the first time in a long time last year. And then Dita Masick is such a talented forward and really piles up the points. And then at the back end too, Kirstine Kent is just all reliable back there in goal for Pocatello as well. It's on the season, the Thunder have allowed, let's see, 5 goals total in 8 matches. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what's going to make the difference, right? The defense. Of course, you love high scoring goal games, but when you get down to the nitty gritty and it's those 1-0 wins or losses, having the defense and the goalie to back that up is what takes you far later on, for sure.
Yeah. Girls soccer, top 5, Sugar Salem, the number 1 team. They're 7-0. They went out and dismantled the opening game, the champions from Sun Valley Community School, and they've just been on a roll ever since. Marsh Valley in the top 5 this week, Sean. They were checking at number 3. They are off to a 7-2 start. They are 3-0 in conference play. So Marsh Valley has got some exciting things going on in girls soccer as well.
Yeah, Marsh Valley is definitely a team in East Idaho that's on the radar as far as girls soccer. A lot of teams will say they don't want to go down a level to go play Marsh Valley, and that speaks to a testament of their team, right? Like they're like, we're all right, just playing in our division. But yeah, Marsh Valley doing really well this season.
That's a tough place to go play, man. It doesn't matter what sport it is. The fans there in Aramo are so passionate and just support their team in droves. It's a tough place to go win down there, Marsh Valley. So congrats to the Eagles and the Diggers for cracking the top 5. Boys soccer, Sean, Thunder Ridge is tied for 4th in the 5A poll, 8-1-1 overall, 1-0-1 in league play. Nothing surprising there. Thunder Ridge has been a strong team the past several seasons. Coach Lance does a great job with the Titans.
Yeah, they're from accounts, they're probably one of the best boys teams in East Idaho, if not the best. They just have a really talented roster. They fill all the spots, and the Thunder Ridge boys team is doing good things right now.
And yet they battled to a draw with Highland on Monday, a 1-1 draw. Highland, in kind of a bizarre twist here, Sean, is 0-0-2. Each of their conference matches have been ties so far. They tied Madison 0-0 last week, and then they tied Thunder Ridge 1-1 on Monday. The Rams will get Madison again in Rexburg on Saturday, September 23rd. The rematch with Thunder Ridge will be at Iron Horse Stadium on Thursday night, September 28th. They're going to play under the lights at 7:30.
Oh, it'll be fun. I think soccer under the lights is great, so I love it.
Yeah, and Thunder Ridge, I'm sure, will be motivated to atone for the draw from earlier in the season. 4A poll, Sean, Century checks in at number 5. They're 6-1 overall, 2-0 in league play.
Yeah, their only losses to Thunder Ridge, and they lost 0-3. And yeah, good team. Century brings back a lot of people from last year, and so far they've done well in conference, and it's a good team. They've got a lot of good players throughout that roster, and they're doing pretty well at the 4A level.
And then in the 3A poll, Sean, you've got Sugar Salem ranked number 1, 5-0-1 on the season. Teton is 3rd. They're 6-0. And American Falls tied for 4th. They've had a lot of draws this year. They've got 4 wins, 2 losses, 3 ties, including 1 in conference play. But those are 3 programs that traditionally are very strong as well. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so Teton and Sugar, both undefeated. Sugar's only tie came against Shelley earlier this year, 1-1. We don't get to see those 2 play, though, until later in September. September 26th in Sugar is when the first Teton-Sugar matchup will take place, and then the season finale at Teton Thursday, October 5th. So that could say a lot. And then for American Falls, we mentioned all of the ties that they've had this year. They tied Firth 2-2. They tied Firth a second time 2-2. And then they've tied Aberdeen 2-2. So and we'll find out, Sean, as we're recording this on Wednesday, September 13th. Sugar Salem and American Falls are doing battle right now. So we'll keep you updated on that on next week's Prepcast.
Yeah, and we talked about this. It's about those teams that if they tie or lose in the first half of the season, and what adjustments they make in the second half of the season. So I think the second half of the season for boys soccer is going to kind of tell you a lot about what adjustments those teams made.
Definitely. All right. On the broadcast schedule this week on IdahoSports.com, we've got some good football matchups for you involving East Idaho teams. First of all, we're going to be having a game involving the Grace Grizzlies. Hey, Grace is a team that people don't get to see much of sometimes. So this is your chance. If you want to watch the Grace Grizzlies, you can do so for free on IdahoSports.com as the Grizzlies travel to Notice for a non-conference battle Friday night at 6 o'clock. Yes, it's kicking off an hour early, so Grace can get home at a decent hour. We've also got Gate City game night, Sean. It's the annual Black and Blue Bowl, Highland and Pocatello. This could be an interesting one. Pocatello just beat Twin Falls 20-7 last week. And that's, by the way, I think that's a potential semifinal preview there. Twin Falls is no joke. And Highland, of course, we've talked about all year. How do you think this Black and Blue Bowl goes?
Oh man, I just, I was talking to someone about it, and you've got a lot of players, right? You've got Drew Contreras as the quarterback for Pocatello. You've got Drew Hymas for the quarterback for Highland. You've got great running backs and Echo Hawk and Jackson Riddle for Highland. And man, you've got so many playmakers. The one that I find kind of interesting is, Julian Bowie. They added, he scored a couple touchdowns against Twin. Take him away. What's that score with Twin Falls, right? I mean, it's a close game, and I agree with you. I think Twin's a really, really good team. So I think it's, what's the generic thing commentators say? It's about matchups, right? Like Kai Callan, the DB of Highland, matching up with someone. I think it's going to be whoever matchup they can find a hole in. It could be the difference. But man, I've seen Highland twice now live, and I just don't know how you account for all their offense. It could be this, high scoring blowout, or it could be just a slugfest in the trenches. I can see it going both ways with how both teams have all this star power.
Yeah, I will say that the Kai Callan versus more than likely Julian Bowie matchup is to me going to be, oh, what a treat to watch. Those are two of the absolute best at what they do going head to head. Kai Callan, best DB in probably the state for his class. You know, he's only a junior. And then, you know, Julian Bowie, of course, going to play basketball at Boise State, but such an explosive wide receiver as well. But to me, I think it comes down to the battle of the trenches, and that Highland front seven is nasty with, like, you know, Colton George and Beckles, and that front seven is no joke. And I think they could give Pocatello some problems there. So that's why I will give Highland the edge. But you'll remember last year's game, Sean. You and I were on the call for it.
Yep.
14-7, Highland won. So
it was you know, I think we going into it, you kind of thought it might be a shootout, right? I think and it wasn't that at all. So that's why I have a feeling like this could be a shootout, or it could be like what we saw last year, a really close game. And I would have to agree with you. I lean a little towards Highland because of not only their defensive line, but their offensive line is phenomenal, and it gives them so many different looks as far as passing and throwing the ball.
Yeah, and then our final game, Friday Night Football, it is Bonneville taking on Idaho Falls at Ravston Stadium as part of East Idaho game night. I mean, Bonneville, obviously, how do they respond after that devastating injury to Tim Williams that we mentioned? Idaho Falls, after dropping that overtime game, or after winning that overtime game to over Thunder Ridge in the season opener, they've dropped 2 in a row. This is a big battle. It's the conference opener for each of these teams. Bonneville's 2-1. Idaho Falls is 1-2. We talked about how good this league is with Skyline and Hillcrest and Shelley all making statements early on in the season. Can Bonneville and Idaho Falls both get to the playoffs? Maybe, but the winner of this game will definitely have a leg up.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of implications for later, right? Winning this game just kind of is going to be important for later on in the season. But yeah, both have a lot to, I mean, it's a big game. I think it's just a big game for both teams. You know, how does Bonneville respond? Idaho Falls kind of looking for some footing. So big game. I don't know where I lean on that one. Losing Tim Williams, I've saw him play live, and he's the real deal. So I'm sure Bonneville will have an answer to that, and hopefully the guys can rally around him. But a good game for sure on East Idaho game night.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. So Grace at Notice, Highland and Pokey in the Black and Blue Bowl, and Bonneville at Idaho Falls, as my dog is in a sneezing fit here, which means it's time for us to go. Sean, where are you going to be at this week?
What game? I'm at Pocatello Highland.
Okay.
I just do all the Highland games. That's what I think it's going to be. No, I don't know. I'm at at Lookout Field. It should be a good one. So I'm excited to see that game. And Highlands played there. Pocatello has not. That's kind of an interesting factor, right? So Highland has played at Lookout this season, and Pocatello has not. But essentially, it's the same turf on both fields, so it looks exactly the same, except for one has a ram and one has the Thunder's logo. But it's kind of a funny thing, right? Highlands had more games on Pocatello's field than they have this season.
Yeah. That is definitely an interesting factoid there. So
he's trying to mute out the dog.
I was before my dog's mutiny against me here. We will sign off. Thank you for tuning into the East Idaho Prepcast, everybody. For Sean Kane and our respective dogs, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.